Welcome to this episode of Random Life. I'm your hostess, Salomonova. And today I want to talk about the topic that I think many humanitarians are so afraid of making, which is the mistakes. And I want to talk in this episode about the mistakes that I wish I hadn't made but I did. And also, I want to invite you to a webinar that I'm hosting this week, where I will be talking about three main do's and don'ts of making mistakes and what people believe or humanitarians believe the mistakes they believe they will make versus what are the mistakes that are they are actually making, and then how to prevent it, right? And I have compiled a lot of different examples of mistakes that my clients believe they made and I have made, and then how to avoid it. And that's the topic of the conversation of the webinar. So, in the meantime, I want to today dive into the topic of what are the mistakes that I wish I hadn't made. And of course, in the hindsight, I can see how they were the mistakes. And if I were to put all of my mistakes into one category, it would be sabotaging myself. And I want to go into detail of how that could actually look like in practice. And I think I've divided them into three more specific points. The first one would be confusion. The second one is fixating on the past. And the third one is keep backtracking, meaning keep starting something and then not finishing and then going back to what I know best, right? So these were the three ways that I had made a mistake and I wish I hadn't. And I want to go into details of what they are. And I also want to distinguish what is a mistake that I mean, so that we are clear on how at least I'm defining it for myself. And the mistake that I believe is the definition of for me is something that I waste, whether it's the time or the energy that I waste, which leads to suffering of certain type, which then leads to an outcome that I don't learn any lessons from. This is what I call a mistake, right? So let's say I have decided to do something, and then that led to a lot of suffering, which then turned out to be a waste because I didn't really learn the lesson from. So that's what I believe is a mistake is. So the mistakes that I wish I hadn't made, but I did, are essentially sabotaging myself along the way, especially in the first year of transitioning after I left my UN job. And I think this is something that is very common that I observe now when I coach a lot of humanitarians. But I think the way that it shows up in our lives, we don't really recognize this being a mistake. We just think that this is just how it is, right? So the way that confusion used to show up in my life, especially after I transitioned the first year, would be that I would be overthinking a lot. I would be believing that this is how I should be doing and then changing it to something else. And I remember even a particular moment where I just kept feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm doing it. I don't know if it's going to work. On all of this, like turmoil was happening, and at the same time, I was struggling with my health because I was at the time suspected of ovarian cancer, and I went to London to treat it, or I thought that that's what I need to do to treat it. And then they in London they found out that I actually didn't have it. It was something else, and I was fine. I didn't have any cancer, but it took me a lot of that shock to go through it, while also going through a lot of my other turmoil of, oh my God, this is not how I thought it would happen. This is not what I thought it would happen. And then I would be spinning and spinning a lot and believing that, well, I just need to, this is how this is how the process is, and maybe to an extent it is, except that I think I delayed the process of really working on the things that I really wanted to, focusing on my health. At the time I wasn't able to focus on my health at the same time as well, because I was so in this confusion mode of I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know how I'm doing, and then creating a lot more drama in my life in addition to my health drama, right? And then to a point that I was just like, oh my god, I really need to slow down and like get hang of my drama, because my confusion is creating so much drama. In the way that, if you're confused, is you feel like you are just overthinking things, or you need to be thinking things through, except that in the end you don't really come to any conclusion, you don't really take any actions, you don't really do something with all the things that's going on in your mind. It's more like you keep creating a lot of turmoil, a lot of noise, a lot of drama in your head, and then in the end you just feel exhausted and you don't have anything to show for it in terms of where you're going, right? So you just keep asking a lot of questions and then you don't really answer them. So all of this is a confusion that our brain keeps creating and generating, because we're so afraid that whatever we're going for is going to work or not. And that was definitely the first mistake that I did. I spent a lot of time in confusion, where I kept essentially going against my own dreams, right? That's what really the self sabotage is. Self sabotage is where we say this is what we want to, and then we do everything against going for the thing that we want to, right? And that's what was happening with the confusion. Is I was having health issues, and in addition I was having a lot of confusion about where I'm going and how I'm going, and is it going to work, it's not going to work, and all of those spinning that in the end didn't result in anything except me suffering, wasting a lot of resources, meaning especially time resources, and then not getting to anywhere that I wanted to. The second mistake that I wish I hadn't made, but I did a lot of the time, which is fixating on the past. And this is the way that it used to show up to me. Is I used to tell myself that if I was working for UN, this wouldn't have happened, right? If I was having my job, this wouldn't have happened. And this is something that I used to get fixated so much on the past. Or the other way that it used to show up is the identity that I used to hold, being the UN identity, or being the UN employee, and then believing that that will just solve a lot of my problems going forward, and then realizing that it didn't. So, for instance, like two examples that I want to give you is that, so it was COVID time. Obviously, the whole world is shutting down, right? And I went to, I think 2021 exactly. I went to my sister's wedding, and then afterwards, my mom and I were going for Europe to Paris to visit my other sister. And I remember at the airport, this was in Moscow where my sister, the other sister, got married. So we were at the airport in Moscow and we were about to board the plane for Paris. And then the Air France, I think at the time, like forbid me to go to take to take on board, because they said that it is not essential, or I don't remember what it was, something like not essential, or like they were not allowing people to board the plane unless they had very compelling reasons to go to Paris at the time, right? And I was asked at the boarding at the gate. I was asked not to board the plane, and I remember feeling so frustrated and so, like, I don't know, disappointment probably wouldn't even cover it. I was like so shocked by how I was not allowed to board the plane. And again, this was the COVID time. And I remember my mom boarding the plane, and I'm saying goodbye to her, and then feeling like, oh, if I worked for UN, this wouldn't have happened. If I worked like if I used to have my previous contract, this wouldn't have happened, right? And this like fixating so much on how things used to be better and different in the past and how it's not. And I think this is another way to just keep gathering all the evidence of what I'm doing currently is not working, essentially. And all the things that I used to do in the past were working, right? So getting nostalgic about it, getting like all the problems that I'm having now is because I no longer work for the humanitarian sector. If I had worked, this problems wouldn't have happened. And I think this type of things keep happening when you transition. And I remember this feeling of all of these problems that I had, I wouldn't have had any if I were working, and if I hadn't left. Even though I didn't want to go back to the sector that I had left for the reasons that I was very clear about, but still the problems after transitioning, the problems that I had faced, I think I just kept feeling like if it wasn't for my transitioning, this problem wouldn't have happened, which was not true, right? Because in COVID, I'm sure even if I did work for UN, that problem probably would have happened. But I think my brain was so adamant to keep showing to me that, well, you shouldn't have left. If this is what happens when you leave the stable environment that you shouldn't have left in the first place. It's a bit like, I think another way of looking at it maybe is like our brains wanting to punish us for wanting to go for something very unknown, unpredictable, and our brain wants to just keep reminding that, well, um, you were in a stable environment, your career was going well, everything was going well. Why the hell did you leave all of this to go for something that you don't even know it will work, right? So all of this were happening, and I remember at the time thinking that, oh my god, I remember like at the airport getting buying another ticket to Rome because uh, that's where I was living at the time. Buying the ticket to Rome to I don't know, it was like the most expensive ticket that I could buy. I bought it for the same day, and I was boarding the plane to Rome, and I was thinking, okay, I don't want to do this anymore to myself. I don't want to be like punishing myself for going for the thing that I want to. And this is, I finally decided what is it that I really want to. I finally decided how I want to live my life. And I don't want to be the person who's punishing myself for having done this, having chosen this, having made this decision. And therefore, I no longer do this to myself, right? So that's really, I think, the other mistake that I had made at a time is really being so fixated on the how the past was better than the future that I was building, and therefore sabotaging my own plans of what I really wanted, and keep sh- gathering evidence to how what I wanted is not going to work, so that I could just go to the safe place of what I knew best, right? So that's the second mistake that I wish I hadn't made, but I did a lot of the times. And the third one is the backtracking. And I think it's a very similar one to the second one, in that we tend to then, because we're so afraid that whatever we are wanting or we are building will not work, and therefore our brain wants to just steer us back to what we know best, right? Our brain wants us to just say, okay, you should just go back to what you know, you should just keep doing what you know best, because the new thing that you're trying obviously is not going to work. Obviously there is no evidence that it will work, and therefore who are you to even try to go for it, and therefore wants us to go back to what we know best. And the way that I had made that mistake, that I didn't even realize that this was my brain sabotaging myself, and I realized it in the hindsight afterwards, is when I went to Ukraine. I went back to Ukraine, and of course, at the time, I reasoned it because I wanted to be with my husband, with my friends, and all of those were true. But at the same time, I realized the other part that I hadn't really noticed in advance was the part of me being a humanitarian and me being in the saving mode, right? Oh, I need to go back and of course save the people, like in quotes, but I think the energy behind what I was doing was really like in the savior's mode of, oh, I need to be doing all the different things to help them. And again, the intentions were very noble, right? But the way that I was trying to do that was not really how I wanted to do supporting or helping others anymore. The way that I wanted to support people that was how I can support them in the most sustainable way to change their lives. It was no longer about how I can do one off thing here and there and hope for the best type of situation. And plus, of course, Ukrainians were very organized. They were helping themselves, and I really admired them. But I just had the feeling that if I was there and I was doing my part, and then realizing that I wasn't really able to do my part, and realizing also that my previous like former humanitarian mindset came up, and my like humanitarian identity at the time was so strong to save in some way that I decided back in the day that that's not what I was going to do anymore, but I was back in doing that. And then once I realized that all the things that I believed I could do to support in that moment, I wasn't able to do because I was struggling with my own problems of survival in the war zone. And then I realized, okay, there is really no point in me staying there. There is really no point in trying to do things that I thought would work and didn't work. And then I remember making a decision to come back. And once I was back, and of course, after surviving two explosions and back home in Italy, and then realizing that, oh, I actually made a mistake again to do the things that I told myself I would no longer do, which is trying to save others, or which is trying to do one off assistance here and there, which I believe wouldn't really solve the core of the problem anyway. And those are the things that I ended up doing again. And then realizing that's not how I want to do my work anymore. And then coming back and then spending essentially a year, almost a year time in that state of keep making mistakes after mistakes, just because I was having difficulty detaching from my identity as a humanitarian who saves the world, I guess. Uh, I was making those mistakes, I think, because I was having such a hard time also not doing anything while seeing all the suffering. And I totally like understand when people tell me that it is very hard also not to do anything when you know that your loved ones are suffering, right? And I think I had a lot of the identity issues of how I just left UN, and at the same time seeing my friends going through this tragic events in Ukraine, and me feeling like I want to do something, at the same time feeling like I'm not really able to do something, and then going through a lot of those things, and the identity issue of who am I now to help them, and all of that, I believe were a mistake if I look at it in the hindsight. But of course, in the moment when it was happening for almost a year, I didn't even feel that was the backtracking that I was doing, right? So the backtracking of going back to what I knew best, going back to doing things the way that I knew how to do it, but at the same time having a conflict within myself as to, is this how I want to do things anymore or not? And then two explosions, me surviving and then coming back and then realizing, oh no, that's not how I wanted to do humanitarian work anymore. That's not how I wanted to do my work anymore. That's not how I can support the people the best. And that really gave me the realization of, okay, this is not how I want to keep making mistakes, of being in the confusion the whole time, keep fixating on the past the whole time, keep fixating on my identity of who am I now? Am I this person? Am I this person? Shall I just go back to what I know? Shall I not? Not being in that mode anymore, because I knew that I wasn't helping myself with that. I wasn't helping anyone else with that. And I just didn't want to be in that state anymore, right? So therefore, I think it took me 2 years to realize all of that, and then realizing, okay, this is who I am now in my identity. This is how I want to support people, and this is how I want to do my work. And I don't want to go into derailing and wandering around and sabotaging myself the whole time, because that is not helping anyone. And especially, that's not helping me to be the person to do things this way, right? And therefore, I really wanted to help humanitarians understand in advance as well what are the mistakes that they believe they might make, and what are they going to do if they will make that mistake, right? And what are the mistakes that I have made myself and I have also seen my clients make, and then how we can really take, I don't know, repository of that to understand why that's happening, and most importantly, how we can prevent them so that we don't waste a lot of time, energy. We don't allow ourselves to suffer a lot in the process, and also we learn from those so much as possible, so that we can expect what mistakes are possible and how to recognize that those are the mistakes, and what to do to prevent them from happening as much as possible. We may not be able to prevent a lot of mistakes, and I just accepted it and in my own journey, and I just decided, okay, these are the mistakes that I will probably continue making, but at least I think the more we learn what they might be actually and how to prevent them, then the more we're likely to be prepared for them. And that's why I wanted to do this webinar this week. I will put more information in the notes, and to talk about what are the do's and don'ts of transitioning, and what are the mistakes that we believe we will make versus what are the actual mistakes we will be making, and then what to do with them, essentially, is the webinar. So I hope that you will join the webinar, and I hope that you will also give your own transitioning some thoughts about what mistakes that you might be afraid of, what mistakes you might be expecting or afraid because of which you're not transitioning. And you can come to the webinar with your questions, and I would love to help answer those questions as much as I'm able to do that. Okay, have a beautiful week, everyone, and I will talk to you very soon. Thank you so much for